The worst betrayal of my life didn't happen at a funeral. It didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened while I was standing on my parents' front porch, holding a birthday cake. It was my father's 65th birthday. I had driven nearly 4 hours just to surprise him. His favorite chocolate cake sat in my hands. I was smiling right up until I reached the front door. That's when I heard my mother laughing. She had no idea I was outside. Then she said something I'll never forget for the rest of my life. Once we sign the papers today, Sarah will never have a claim to this house again. Everyone inside laughed. My father laughed. My sister laughed. Then my sister said, "She'll probably cry." My mother answered, "Let her. She's been a disappointment since she was born." The birthday cake slipped from my hands. It hit the porch, upside down. Chocolate icing exploded across the front steps. No one heard it. They were too busy celebrating the fact that they were cutting me out of the family forever. I stood there, completely frozen. 36 years. 36 years of trying to earn their love, working overtime whenever they needed money, paying their property taxes after Dad retired, replacing the roof when they couldn't afford it, never asking for a single dollar back. And inside that house, they were laughing while signing it over to my sister. Then, my father said something that made my blood run cold. Good thing Dad never told Sarah about the blue envelope. Silence. My mother whispered, "She doesn't even know it exists." I slowly closed my eyes, because they were wrong. I knew exactly what the blue envelope was. I'd been hiding it for almost 10 years. And Grandpa had warned me this day would come. He looked me straight in the eyes a week before he died and said, "One day, they'll believe they finally beat you. When that happens, don't argue, don't beg. Just open the blue envelope." Standing there, listening to my own parents celebrate destroying my future, I realized something. They thought they were ending my story. They had no idea. They had just started it. I didn't knock. I didn't ring the doorbell. I quietly picked up the ruined birthday cake, placed the crushed box on the porch swing, and walked back to my car. Not because I was afraid, because Grandpa's last words echoed in my mind. Don't argue. Let them believe they've won. For the first time in my life, I listened. I drove home in complete silence. No music, no phone calls, just one question repeating inside my head. Why? What had I ever done to deserve being treated like I didn't exist? I had never stolen from them, never lied to them, never embarrassed them. If anything, I'd spent my entire adult life fixing their problems. When Dad lost money after retirement, I quietly paid the property taxes. Every year. I never told Emily. I never told my parents. I simply mailed the checks. The county receipts came to me because Grandpa had arranged it that way years ago. He always smiled and said, "Sometimes helping people quietly tells you who they really are." I finally understood what he meant. When I reached my house, I locked the front door, walked straight into my bedroom, and pulled the old wooden box from the top shelf of my closet. It hadn't moved in almost 10 years. Inside lay the faded blue envelope, still sealed. Grandpa's handwriting covered the front. For Sarah. Only after they choose Emily. My hands started trembling. He knew. He knew exactly how this would end. I carefully broke the seal. Inside were 3 things: a handwritten letter, a small brass key, and a folded document. I unfolded Grandpa's letter first. "My sweet Sarah, if you're reading this, then your parents finally made the choice I always feared they would. First, I need you to know something. None of this was ever your fault." Tears rolled down my face. Those were the words I'd waited my entire life to hear. Not from my parents, but from someone who had truly loved me. I kept reading. "Your parents believe this house belongs to them. Legally, it never did." I froze. What? I read the sentence again. Then again. Surely I had misunderstood. Grandpa continued. 32 years ago, I transferred ownership into a family trust. Not because I didn't trust your parents, because I knew money changes people, especially people who confuse love with entitlement. My heartbeat quickened. A trust? No one had ever mentioned a trust. Not once. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Your father has lived in that house for years, thinking he owned it. He doesn't. I sat there, unable to breathe. If Grandpa was telling the truth, my parents had just celebrated giving away something that legally wasn't theirs. Then I unfolded the second document. It wasn't a deed. It wasn't a will. It was the official trust agreement. Stamped, notarized, recorded with the county. At the bottom, one line had been highlighted in yellow. I read it aloud. Upon my death, the trustee shall transfer the property only after both beneficiaries are treated equally. Beneficiaries. Plural. Not Emily. Not Sarah. Both daughters. Equally. If one child was intentionally excluded, the transfer became invalid. I stared at the page. My parents hadn't just hurt me. According to Grandpa, they had broken the one condition that controlled the entire house. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Emily. The first message she'd sent me in almost 6 months. It contained only a photo. She was standing in the living room of our childhood home, holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Guess it's finally my house." A second message arrived 5 seconds later. "Mom says you'll get over it." I slowly looked back at Grandpa's letter, then smiled. Not because I wanted revenge, because for the first time, I knew something they didn't. They weren't celebrating ownership. They were celebrating the biggest mistake of their lives. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. A calm older man spoke. "Is this Sarah Bennett?" "Yes." "My name is Michael Lawson. I'm the attorney who created your grandfather's trust." My heart stopped. "I've been trying to reach your parents all morning." He paused, then said the words that made me realize this was about to explode. "They're attempting to transfer a house. They don't legally own." They're attempting to transfer a house. They don't legally own. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "What did you say?" The attorney spoke calmly. "Your grandfather asked me to contact you if anyone ever tried to transfer that property without meeting the conditions of the trust." I looked down at the documents spread across my kitchen table. "So, they can't give the house to Emily?" "No. They never could." I felt my heart pounding. Then why didn't anyone stop them? There was a long pause. "Because no one told me your grandfather had passed away." I frowned. "What?" "He passed away almost 10 years ago." "I know. And according to the trust, I wasn't supposed to step in unless someone attempted an illegal transfer." He sighed. "That happened yesterday." Yesterday. The same day. My parents held their little celebration. I slowly sat back in my chair. They really thought they owned it. They did. And now, they've created a very serious legal problem. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt sad. Because my parents hadn't just betrayed me. They'd embarrassed themselves. Mr. Lawson continued. "Sarah, there's something else." "What?" "Your grandfather left one final instruction." I glanced at the letter. I thought I already had everything. "You don't." "He left something in the house." My pulse quickened. "In the house?" "Yes." "He instructed me not to reveal its location, unless your parents tried exactly what they've just done." I whispered. "What is it?" "I honestly don't know. He never told me. He only gave me one sentence to repeat." I grabbed a pen. "Go ahead." He spoke slowly. "Tell Sarah to look where every birthday began." Where every birthday began. I repeated the sentence over and over. It sounded familiar, like something Grandpa used to say, but I couldn't place it. Before I could think any longer, my phone buzzed again. Emily. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. She sounded happier than I'd heard in years. "Hey, Sarah. What do you want?" "I just wanted to thank you." "For what?" She laughed. "You always said family should stay close. Now I get to live in the family home." I stayed quiet. She mistook my silence for defeat. "You know, I really thought you'd fight harder. I guess you finally accepted your place." I closed my eyes. She had no idea. Not yet. Emily, can I ask you something? Sure. Has Mom or Dad mentioned Grandpa's trust? Silence. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then she laughed. What trust? Exactly. She didn't know either. The call ended. I immediately called Mr. Lawson back. They never knew. I suspected as much. So what happens now? I've already filed an emergency notice with the county recorder. My heart skipped. What does that mean? It means no one can legally sell, refinance, or transfer that property until the trust dispute is resolved. I smiled for the first time since hearing my parents on the porch. So the house still belongs to the trust. Correct. And until a judge rules, no one owns it. That evening, my mother called. I let it ring. She called again, then again. 7 missed calls. Finally, she left a voicemail. Her voice sounded irritated, not concerned, not apologetic, just irritated. Sarah, I don't know why you're acting like this. Emily is moving into the house on Saturday. If you have anything left there, come get it before then. Anything left there. I laughed, quietly, because she still believed she was giving orders. The next morning, I drove to the county records office. I wanted to see the transfer paperwork with my own eyes. The clerk recognized my name immediately. Mrs. Bennett? Yes. She disappeared into the back room. When she returned, she wasn't carrying 1 file. She was carrying 3. There's been some confusion. What kind of confusion? She opened the top folder. This deed transferring the house to Emily was submitted yesterday. She opened the second folder. This emergency injunction arrived this morning. Then she opened the third. My stomach dropped. This one arrived 23 years ago. I stared at the document. What is that? The clerk looked at me. It's a sealed instruction from your grandfather. It wasn't supposed to be opened until someone in your family tried to transfer the house. She slowly slid it across the counter. Across the front, in Grandpa's handwriting, were 8 words. Open only after my children betray Sarah. I couldn't stop staring at the envelope. Open only after my children betray Sarah. My grandfather hadn't written if. He wrote after. Somehow, 23 years ago, he already knew this day would come. My hands were trembling so badly. The county clerk quietly handed me a letter opener. I think your grandfather wanted you to read this. I nodded, then carefully broke the seal. Inside, there was another handwritten letter. Only 1 page. At the very top, Grandpa had written, Sarah, if you're holding this letter, then I failed to save my own children. A tear rolled down my cheek. I kept reading. Money didn't destroy your parents. It simply revealed who they chose to become. Never mistake their choices for your worth. I closed my eyes. For 36 years, I'd wondered what was wrong with me, why my parents always chose Emily, why I always came second. Grandpa answered it in 3 sentences. There had never been anything wrong with me. The next paragraph made my heart race. There is one final condition in the trust, one I intentionally kept secret from everyone. I looked up at Mr. Lawson. You didn't know about this? He slowly shook his head. No. This letter wasn't filed with me. Your grandfather filed it directly with the court. I looked back down. If either of my children attempts to exclude Sarah from this home, they immediately lose every right to live there. Permanently. The room became silent. Even the county clerk looked surprised. I frowned. What does that mean? Mr. Lawson smiled faintly. It means your parents accidentally triggered the penalty clause. So, they can't stay there? He nodded. Not legally. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time, I realized Grandpa hadn't just protected me. He had protected the house. He knew exactly what would happen after he was gone. Then I reached the last paragraph. Sarah, I know you. You'll be tempted to forgive them immediately. Don't. Not until they tell the truth. Mercy without accountability only teaches people they can hurt you again. I slowly folded the letter. Those words hit harder than anything else. Because Grandpa knew me. He knew I'd rather keep the peace than defend myself. Not this time. Mr. Lawson stood. I've already filed an emergency hearing. When? Tomorrow morning. So soon? He nodded. Your parents are trying to record the new deed today. If we don't stop it, this becomes much harder. Just then,
My phone rang. Mom.
again, I answered. What? She sounded furious. What did you do? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play games with me. The county recorder just rejected Emily's deed. I looked at Mr. Lawson. He quietly smiled. Perfect timing. Mom continued yelling. They're saying some trust owns the house. What trust? I remained silent. Sarah, answer me. Instead, I asked one question. Mom, did Grandpa ever tell you that the house wasn't yours? Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then she whispered something that made my blood run cold. He promised he'd never tell you. I froze.
What?
My mother had just admitted. She already knew. She knew. All these years. She knew the house wasn't legally hers. She simply believed I'd never find out. Before I could respond, the call disconnected. Not because she hung up, because another call came through. It was Emily. I answered. She was crying. Real crying. Not angry. Terrified. Sarah, please. You have to help me. What happened? Her voice shook. There are deputies at the house. They're making everyone leave. I stood up. What? They say. We're not allowed inside anymore. I looked at Mr. Lawson. He quietly nodded. The court moved faster than I expected. Emily was sobbing now. Sarah? Mom keeps saying this is all your fault. I took a slow breath, then answered with the calmest voice I'd used all week. No, Emily. This started long before me. It started the day Mom and Dad decided one daughter mattered more than the other. Then I ended the call. As I placed my phone on the table, Mr. Lawson slid one final document toward me. This is tomorrow's court filing. I glanced at the first page. Then my heart nearly stopped. At the very top, under the case title, was a sentence I never expected to read. Petitioner, Sarah Bennett, current legal beneficiary of the Bennett Family Trust. I couldn't take my eyes off the first page. Current legal beneficiary of the Bennett Family Trust. My name. Not my father's. Not my mother's.
Mine.
I looked up at Mr. Lawson. There has to be a mistake. There isn't. My parents lived in that house for 35 years. They did. So, how can I be the beneficiary? He folded his hands. Because your grandfather never intended to leave the house to his children. He intended to leave it to the grandchild who protected the family. I felt my throat tighten. What does that mean? Instead of answering, he opened another folder. Inside were copies of county tax records. He slid them across the desk. Look at the payment history.
I did.
Year after year, every property tax payment had been made on time. Then I noticed something. The payer's name wasn't hidden. It was mine. Sarah Bennett. Every year. For 8 straight years. I looked at him. I only did that because Dad couldn't afford it after he retired. I know. So. He smiled. So did your grandfather. I frowned. Grandpa died before Dad retired. Correct. But he planned for that possibility. He handed me another page. It was an amendment to the trust. Signed 2 years before Grandpa passed away. One paragraph had been highlighted. I read it slowly. If either granddaughter voluntarily preserves this property without expectation of repayment, that granddaughter shall become the primary beneficiary of the Bennett Family Trust. I stopped breathing. What? Mr. Lawson nodded. You never asked your parents for reimbursement. I shook my head.
No.
You never told your sister.
No.
You simply protected the home. Yes. He smiled. And that's exactly what your grandfather wanted. Tears rolled down my face. All those years, I thought I was just helping my parents. I never imagined. Grandpa had quietly been watching, even after he was gone. Just then, Mr. Lawson's assistant knocked on the office door. Sir, they're here.
He looked at me.
I was hoping we'd have more time.
Who?
Before he could answer, the conference room door flew open. My mother stormed inside. My father followed behind her. Emily stood several feet back, looking completely overwhelmed. The moment my mother saw me, she pointed her finger in my face. "You did this." The receptionist hurried after them. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Lawson." They wouldn't stop. He calmly raised his hand. "It's all right." Then he looked at my parents. "You've interrupted a legal meeting." My mother didn't care. She slammed both hands onto the conference table. "I don't know what game you're playing, but remove whatever nonsense you filed today." Mr. Lawson didn't even blink. "It's not nonsense. It's the law." Dad finally spoke. His voice wasn't angry. It was scared. "Michael, we've known each other for years. There has to be some misunderstanding." "There isn't." Mr. Lawson slowly pushed the trust agreement across the table. "You should read it." Dad barely glanced at the first page. "I don't need to. I know what my father wanted." Mr. Lawson answered quietly.
No.
"You know what you assumed he wanted." Mom grabbed the papers. She scanned the highlighted paragraph. Then her face turned completely white. "No." She whispered. "No. This isn't possible." "It is. You changed this." "I didn't. My father would never do this to us." Mr. Lawson looked directly at her. "He didn't. You did." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Silence. Then Emily quietly spoke. "Mom, what is this?" Mom ignored her. She kept flipping through the pages, searching desperately for something. Anything. Finally,
She looked at me.
"When did you find out?" I answered honestly. "Yesterday." Dad slowly lowered himself into a chair. His hands were shaking. "You've been paying the property taxes?" "Yes." "For 8 years?" "Yes." He stared at me, completely speechless. Then he whispered something that broke my heart. "We thought Emily was helping." I looked at my sister. She looked just as shocked. "What?" Dad turned toward her. "You told us. You were taking care of everything." Emily's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't tell you the truth." "What truth?" She started crying. "I never paid a single tax bill. I spent the money." The room fell completely silent. Mom slowly turned toward Emily. "You what?" Emily buried her face in her hands. "Every year, you gave me money for the taxes. I used it to pay off my credit cards. I thought I'd replace it before anyone noticed." Nobody spoke, not even my mother, because for the first time in her life, her perfect daughter had just admitted she'd been lying to everyone. Then Mr. Lawson quietly slid one final envelope across the table. "It's time." I frowned. "Time for what?" He smiled. "Your grandfather's last letter. The one he instructed me to deliver only after your family told each other the truth." No one moved. No one spoke. The conference room had become so quiet. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Emily sat with her face buried in her hands. My father stared at the table. My mother looked as though the floor had disappeared beneath her. Mr. Lawson gently placed the envelope in front of me. "This was the last instruction your grandfather ever gave me," he said. "Don't let Sarah read this until everyone stops pretending." I looked around the room. For the first time, there were no excuses, no blame, no pretending. I slowly opened the envelope.
Inside
Was a handwritten letter. The paper had yellowed with age, but Grandpa's handwriting was as neat as ever. "My sweet Sarah, if you've reached this letter, then the truth has finally come out. That means it's time for mine." A tear rolled down my cheek. I kept reading. "Your parents will probably tell you they loved both daughters equally.
Don't argue with them.
People believe the stories they tell themselves.
Instead,
Watch what they choose when something valuable is at stake. That will always tell you the truth." I slowly looked toward my parents. Neither of them could meet my eyes. Grandpa continued. "Years ago, your father came to me asking for money. The business had failed. He was afraid of losing the house. I paid every debt he had, on one condition." Dad suddenly looked up. His face turned pale. "No," he whispered. "No." Mom looked at him. "What condition?" Dad didn't answer. He already knew. My hands trembled as I continued reading. I made your father promise me that he would never compare his daughters, that he would never make one child feel less loved than the other. He shook my hand and promised. I stopped reading. I couldn't. My vision had become blurry. Dad quietly covered his face. I'm sorry. It was barely a whisper. The first apology I'd ever heard from him. Grandpa's letter continued. 3 years later, he broke that promise. Not once, not twice. Over and over again. Mom slowly looked at Dad. You never told me this. He nodded weakly. I was ashamed. Then came the sentence that changed everything. The trust was never created to punish your parents. It was created to protect you from becoming the child they forgot. I closed my eyes. For 36 years, I'd wondered why Grandpa always believed in me. Now I knew. He hadn't been choosing favorites. He'd been protecting the one child who had no one else. Then Mr. Lawson quietly cleared his throat. Sarah, there's one final document. He opened a leather folder. Inside was a deed. A brand new deed. Prepared years ago. Already signed by Grandpa. Only one signature was missing.
Mine.
I frowned. What is this? Mr. Lawson smiled. If you sign it, the trust ends today. And the house officially becomes yours. My mother suddenly stood up. Sarah? Her voice cracked. Please. I looked at her. It had been years since she'd looked at me that way. Not angry. Not disappointed. Afraid. Real fear. She slowly walked toward me. I know we've made mistakes. Mistakes? I repeated quietly. You gave away my childhood home. Without even telling me. She nodded. I know. You listened while Emily called me a disappointment. I know. You let me pay your property taxes for 8 years. While thanking someone else. She couldn't answer. Because every word was true. Then something happened that none of us expected. Dad stood up. Walked over to me. And for the first time in my life, he chose me, not Emily.
Me.
He looked at my mother and quietly said, Enough. She stared at him in shock. He continued, We've spent 36 years asking Sarah to earn our love. His voice broke. She already did. We're the ones who never deserved hers. The room fell silent. Even Emily began crying again. Dad turned back toward me. I can't change your childhood. I can't give you back every birthday we ruined, or every achievement we ignored. He swallowed hard. But I won't lie anymore. He slowly looked at Mr. Lawson, then said something none of us saw coming. The house belongs to Sarah. It always should have. Mom looked at him in disbelief. What are you doing? He answered without looking at her. The only honest thing I've done. In years. Then he reached into his pocket, removed his house keys, walked over to me, and gently placed them in my hand. But before I could say a word, Mr. Lawson looked down at his phone. His expression changed instantly. He looked at me and said, Sarah, I don't think you should move back into that house. My heart skipped. Why? He slowly turned the phone toward me. A live news report filled the screen. Flames were pouring through the roof of my childhood home. The house is on fire. For a moment, I thought Mr. Lawson had to be mistaken. I grabbed his phone. The local news helicopter was flying over my childhood neighborhood. Thick black smoke poured into the sky. Bright orange flames ripped through the roof. At the bottom of the screen, the reporter said, Firefighters responded just minutes ago to a house fire on Willow Creek Drive. That was my street.
My home.
Or at least, the home I'd spent my entire childhood trying to feel welcome in. Nobody spoke. Then my mother screamed. No. She ran out of the office. Dad chased after her. Emily burst into tears. I stood completely still. Not because I didn't care. Because something didn't make sense. The fire had started less than 30 minutes after the county rejected the property transfer. Too much of a coincidence.
Mr. Lawson looked at me.
I know what you're thinking. I nodded. This wasn't an accident. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We were both thinking the same thing. 20 minutes later, we arrived behind 3 fire engines. Police cars blocked both ends of the street. Neighbors stood on the sidewalks, watching, whispering. Some of them recognized me. One elderly woman quietly hugged me. "Oh, Sarah? I'm so sorry." I thanked her, but my eyes never left the house. The upstairs bedrooms were already gone. The roof had collapsed. Years of memories disappearing into smoke. Then I noticed something strange. The front door was standing wide open. Firefighters usually forced doors open. This one wasn't broken. It had simply been left open. I quietly pointed. "Mr. Lawson." He looked. His expression changed immediately. "I see it." Just then, a firefighter walked toward us. "Are you Sarah Bennett?" "Yes." "I'm Fire Captain Lewis. I'm sorry about your home." I nodded. "Do you know what caused it?" He hesitated. "It's too early to say." Then he lowered his voice. "But what?" "We found something unusual." He led us closer to the driveway. An investigator was taking photographs. Near the garage sat 3 empty gasoline cans, perfectly lined up. My stomach turned. Captain Lewis spoke quietly. "They didn't belong to the homeowner." My heart started pounding. "So, you think someone brought them here?" He nodded. "It certainly looks that way." Behind us, my mother suddenly began shouting, "This is your fault." Every neighbor turned to look. She marched straight toward me. "If you hadn't challenged the transfer, none of this would have happened." I stared at her. "Our house is burning. And you're blaming me?" She pointed a trembling finger at my face. "You wanted this house. Now look at it." Before I could answer, Dad stepped between us. "Margaret, stop." "No." She shoved him away. "You've defended her enough."
Dad looked exhausted. "No."
"I defended you for 36 years. I'm done." Those 4 words hit harder than the fire itself. Then, a detective walked over. "Mrs. Bennett?" "Yes." "I'm Detective Harris. We'll need to ask everyone a few questions." He looked toward my parents, separately. My mother immediately crossed her arms.
"Why?"
He answered calmly. "Because this fire is being investigated as suspicious." The neighborhood fell silent. Emily suddenly grabbed my arm. "Sarah?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I need to tell you something."
"What?"
She looked around, making sure our parents couldn't hear. "I came back to the house this morning." "You did?" She nodded. "I forgot my purse." "What happened?" "I wasn't alone." My heartbeat quickened. "Who was there?" She swallowed hard. "I saw Mom coming out of Grandpa's old workshop." I frowned. "Grandpa's workshop? It hasn't been opened in years." "I know." Emily's hands were shaking. She was carrying a metal box. "What kind of box?" "I don't know." But when she saw me, she hid it in the trunk of her car. I felt a chill run through my body. Grandpa's workshop. The one room in the house he never let anyone remodel. The one room he always kept locked. Then Emily whispered something that made every hair on my arm stand up. "Sarah?" 5 minutes after Mom drove away, the house exploded. The house exploded. I stared at Emily. "What did you just say?" She was crying so hard. She could barely breathe. I was halfway down the street when I heard this huge boom. I turned around, and flames were shooting out of Grandpa's workshop. Detective Harris immediately stepped closer. "You saw your mother leave the property before the explosion?" Emily nodded. "Yes." "About 5 minutes before." "And she was carrying a metal box?" "Yes." The detective pulled out a notebook. "What did the box look like?" "It was old, dark green, about this big." She held her hands about 18 inches apart. My heart skipped. Grandpa kept all his important documents in military surplus boxes. I remembered that from childhood. Detective Harris looked toward another officer. "Find out if any nearby security cameras cover the street." The officer nodded. "I'm on it." My mother overheard every word. She stormed toward Emily. "How dare you?" Emily stepped back. "I'm telling the truth." No. You're confused. I saw you. You didn't see anything. For the first time, Emily didn't back down. She looked directly at Mom. I've lied for you my whole life. I'm done. The silence that followed was louder than the fire engines. Just then, Captain Lewis walked over carrying a clear evidence bag.
Inside
Was something black and badly burned. What is that? He carefully held it up. We found this inside the workshop. I looked closer. It was a small metal nameplate. Even through the soot, I could still read the engraving. William Bennett.
Grandpa.
It had come from his old workbench. Captain Lewis spoke quietly. The workshop appears to be where the fire started. I closed my eyes. Grandpa had spent 40 years building furniture in that little workshop. Every Christmas gift, every rocking chair, every toy he'd ever made for us came from that room.
Now.
It was gone. Detective Harris's phone suddenly rang. He answered, listened carefully, then looked directly at my mother. We've already located surveillance footage. She froze. What footage? From the gas station 2 blocks away. Nobody spoke. He continued. It shows someone purchasing 3 gasoline cans and filling them. This morning. My mother's face lost all color. Dad slowly turned toward her. Margaret, he whispered. You went to the gas station? She immediately shook her head.
No.
I've never been there. The detective looked down at his phone. That's interesting, because the person on the video used your credit card. The entire street fell silent. Even the firefighters stopped talking. Mom looked around desperately. They're wrong. It wasn't me. Detective Harris remained calm. Then I'm sure you'll have no problem explaining it. Before she could answer, one of the investigators came running from the backyard. Detective, we found something. Everyone turned. The investigator was holding another evidence bag. Inside was a brass key. My heart skipped. I knew that key. Grandpa always wore it around his neck. The same brass key that disappeared the day he died. I whispered, that's Grandpa's workshop key. The investigator nodded. We found it buried under fresh dirt, behind the shed. Fresh dirt. Someone had hidden it.
Today.
Detective Harris looked at my mother. Mrs. Bennett, I'm going to ask you again. Were you inside that workshop this morning? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at Dad, almost pleading, as if waiting for him to save her. For 36 years, he always had.
Not today.
He slowly lowered his head. I can't lie anymore. Those words broke whatever was left of my mother's composure. She began crying. Not quietly, not softly. She collapsed onto the front lawn, sobbing. I never meant for this to happen. Every person on the street froze. Detective Harris took one careful step forward. What didn't you mean to happen? Mom covered her face. I only wanted. She couldn't finish. The detective waited. Finally, through tears, she whispered, I was only trying to destroy the papers. My heart stopped. What papers? She looked toward the burning workshop. Then at me. The papers your grandfather hid from all of us. Before anyone could ask another question, a firefighter shouted from inside the house. Captain, we found a safe. Every head turned toward the smoke-filled workshop. The captain looked back at Detective Harris. It survived the fire. Then he looked at me. And judging by the name engraved on it, I think your grandfather wanted you to open it. The fire captain carefully carried the safe across the front yard. It was blackened by smoke, covered in ash, but it hadn't melted. It hadn't even cracked. Grandpa had bought it nearly 30 years ago. He used to joke, if the house ever burns down, this old thing will still be standing. Standing there, watching firefighters carry it toward me, I realized he had been right. The captain set it gently on the tailgate of his truck. A small brass nameplate was still attached. Property of William Bennett. Below it, someone had scratched 3 words into the steel. For Sarah only. My mother saw it. The moment she read those words, she started crying even harder. No, she whispered. He actually did it. Detective Harris looked at her. What do you mean? She covered her face. I begged him not to. The detective narrowed his eyes. You knew about this safe? She nodded. Barely. I knew. He kept something for Sarah. I looked at her. For me? She couldn't even look in my direction. I thought. It was money. I thought. He was cutting us out. So I searched for it. She looked toward the burned workshop. For years. Every person standing there, firefighters, neighbors, police officers, fell completely silent. 30 years. She had spent 30 years trying to find something that had never belonged to her. Captain Lewis held up a heavy key. We found this inside the safe's lock. It survived. He handed it to me. My hands were trembling so badly. I almost dropped it. I slowly inserted the key.
Turned it. Click.
The lock released. The heavy steel door creaked open.
Inside.
There wasn't a stack of cash. There weren't gold coins. There weren't expensive jewels. There were only 3 things. A leather journal, a sealed envelope, and a small wooden jewelry box. I reached for the envelope first. Across the front, Grandpa had written, "Open this before anything else." I unfolded the letter. Sarah, if this safe has been opened, then the truth has finally caught up with our family. Don't waste your life trying to punish them. The truth will do that for you. I smiled through my tears. That sounded exactly like Grandpa.
Calm, wise.
Never angry. I continued reading. Everything inside this safe belongs to you. Not because you're my favorite. Because you are the only person who never asked me for anything. Dad quietly wiped his eyes. Emily lowered her head. My mother couldn't stop crying. Then I picked up the leather journal. Inside, Grandpa had written entries for nearly 20 years. Every birthday, every Christmas, every family gathering. One entry caught my attention immediately. It was dated June 14th, my 16th birthday. I opened to the page. Today, Sarah cried in my workshop. She believes her parents love Emily more. I told her something I've never had the courage to tell my own son. Love is proven by sacrifice, not by words. Today, Sarah sacrificed again. Her parents didn't notice. One day, I hope they finally do. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. For years, I thought no one had seen me. Grandpa had seen everything. Every silent disappointment. Every forgotten birthday. Every broken promise. Then I reached the last page. Folded inside was another document. Official. Stamped.
Signed.
I handed it to Mr. Lawson. He read the first paragraph, then looked at me in complete disbelief. Sarah? What? He slowly turned the page around. This isn't about the house. I frowned. What do you mean? He pointed to the title. The William Bennett Family Foundation. I looked at him. I've never heard of it. No one has. He swallowed hard. Because your grandfather kept it private. I looked down at the numbers. My breath caught. The foundation owned farmland, investment accounts, commercial buildings, and several rental properties. The estimated value was just over $28 million. The entire street went silent. Mom gasped. Emily covered her mouth. Dad closed his eyes. Then Mr. Lawson quietly read the final paragraph aloud. Upon my death, the Board of Trustees shall appoint Sarah Bennett as the sole chairperson, if she proves she values people above possessions. He looked up. A small smile crossed his face. Sarah, you passed. Before I could even process what I'd heard, Detective Harris's phone rang. He answered, listened, then slowly looked at my mother. Mrs. Bennett, the crime lab has finished reviewing the fire evidence. The detective paused, then said the words that changed everything. They've ruled it wasn't an accident. The detective lowered his phone. Then he looked directly at my mother. The state fire marshal has completed the preliminary investigation. The fire was intentionally set. No one moved. My mother looked like she couldn't breathe. Dad slowly stepped away from her, almost as if, for the first time, he didn't recognize the woman he'd spent 40 years defending. Detective Harris continued. The gasoline found at the scene matches the gasoline purchased using your credit card. The fingerprints recovered from the gas cans also belong to you. The neighborhood fell completely silent. Even the reporters stopped talking. Every camera turned toward my mother. She looked around desperately, searching for someone to rescue her. For decades, that person had always been my father. Today, he simply lowered his head. The detective spoke gently. "Mrs. Bennett, would you like to tell us what happened?" She covered her face. For nearly a minute, all we heard were her sobs. Finally, she whispered, "I never wanted to burn the house." I felt my heart tighten. "What?" She looked at me through tears. "I only wanted to burn the workshop." Everyone froze. She continued, "I knew your grandfather kept something there. I searched for years. I never found it. When the trust papers came out, I panicked. I thought if I destroyed everything, no one could prove anything." She looked toward the burned remains of the workshop. "I never thought the fire would spread." Detective Harris nodded. "Thank you." Then he quietly informed her she was being placed under arrest pending formal charges. As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, she didn't fight. She didn't scream. She simply looked at me. For the first time in my life, my mother looked small, not powerful, not intimidating, just broken. As she walked past me, she stopped, barely above a whisper. She said, "I'm sorry. For 36 years, I had imagined hearing those words. I thought they would heal something inside me. They didn't." Some apologies arrive after they've missed the chance to change anything. I simply nodded. Not because everything was okay, but because I didn't want to carry the weight of hating her anymore. Dad remained standing in the driveway, watching the police car disappear. He looked 20 years older. Then he slowly walked toward me. "I don't expect forgiveness." I smiled sadly. "You've said that before." He nodded. "I know. This time, I'm not asking." He reached into his wallet, pulled out a faded photograph. It showed me at 8 years old, covered in sawdust, standing beside Grandpa in his workshop. I was holding a tiny wooden birdhouse. Dad smiled through his tears. "He made me carry this picture every day." I frowned. "Grandpa."
No.
I did. He swallowed hard. "Because every morning, I wanted to become the father you deserved." His voice broke. "And every evening, I failed." For the first time, I hugged my father, not because the past disappeared, because I finally saw the truth. He wasn't cruel.
He was weak.
And weakness had cost him almost everything. Emily quietly walked toward us. She couldn't stop crying. "I'm sorry, Sarah." I believed Mom. I believed I deserved more. She looked down. "But I never once asked what it was costing you." I took her hand. "This only works if we stop competing." She nodded. "I know. I'd like to try." It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was an honest beginning. 3 months later, the criminal case concluded. My mother accepted responsibility for setting the fire. Because she confessed early, the court considered her remorse. She received probation, community service, restitution for the damage, and counseling rather than a lengthy prison sentence. Dad sold his vacation cabin to help repay the insurance losses. Emily sold her luxury condo, not because anyone forced her to, because for the first time, she wanted to earn something instead of expecting it. As for the house, there wasn't much left. Most people expected me to rebuild it exactly as it had been. I didn't. Some places carry too much pain. Instead, I kept Grandpa's old stone chimney, the only part the fire couldn't destroy. Around it, I built something entirely new, a community woodworking center. Children came every Saturday. Grandparents taught grandchildren how to build birdhouses. Parents learned to make bookshelves with their kids. Families laughed together, inside a place that had once been filled with silence. Above the entrance, I hung Grandpa's favorite quote: "The greatest inheritance isn't a house. It's making sure the next generation feels loved inside it." Every time I unlocked those doors, I remembered the little girl who spent years believing she wasn't enough. She had been enough all along. She had simply been waiting for someone to remind her. Sometimes people ask me, "What did your grandfather really leave you?" They expect me to talk about the trust, the house, the foundation, the money. I always smile, because they're asking the wrong question. Grandpa didn't leave me a fortune. He left me proof. Proof that one person believing in you can silence a lifetime of rejection. And my parents? They spent decades trying to decide which daughter deserved the family home. In the end, they learned something much more important. A house can be given away. It can be burned down. It can even be rebuilt. But trust, once it's destroyed, takes a lifetime to earn back. And sometimes, it never does.